the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 125 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Beckson. I hope everyone's doing well and enjoying the cold up north. It's nice and warm down here in Costa Rica, not a cloud in the sky. So today we're going to be talking with Jerry Werth of Pura Vida Drilling. He's been in the water drilling business since 1986. In the USA and also Latin America, most prevalently here in Costa Rica. So we're going to be discussing with him kind of water exploration, permitting, and also drilling for water in Costa Rica and what you need to understand. I know we've got quite a few people out there that are looking to do developments or buying land and actually putting a well on it or drilling. So this one's even going to be learning for me. I always love to talk to anyone that's in water, as that really is kind of the crux of it, I would say developing here in Costa Rica. All the rules changed a few years ago. And since then, again, you need a legal water source to build and also a legal water source to subdivide land as well. The reason for that was prior, a lot of people were just subdividing land and selling it off without water. And then when people came to submit plans for construction, they would ask, hey, where is your water? Where's your legal water source? And they'd be like, we don't have one. And of course, basically, it stopped people being able to sell land without legal water as well there. So it's be great to discuss this with him. Remember, if you want to contact us, you can. info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. For anyone that is looking to invest in Costa Rica, no matter what it is, we deal with everything from basically investing in a condo, making sure that you make the right move in the right area and really understand kind of the financials behind it, all the way up to larger developments. We have a couple of hotel projects going on here and also some land subdivisions as well. So feel free to reach out to us, info@investingcostarica.com. But let's get straight into it with Jerry. Good morning, Jerry. How are you doing?
Good morning, Richard. Great to be on your podcast and just glad to be here.
No, not at all. It's an absolute pleasure to have I would use the word legend. You are in our office anyway, of someone that knows drilling. And I mean, just reading over your bio, I mean, you've been in drilling since 1986, if I'm correct, right?
Correct. Yeah, my whole life.
Sure. Wow. And you've been here in Costa Rica for 21 years?
21 years. Yeah.
Wow. You're a lifer like me. So.
Well, yeah, we moved here in 2021. So, we saw the boom that happened before the crash. Yep. And then we saw the aftermath after the crash. So
yep. Yeah, no. Well, I mean, talking on that, I mean, with world, economies dealing with inflation, a bit of a global slowdown. I mean, how has this impacted your work? And I mean, what do you think that this will probably mean for Costa Rica, Jerry?
I've seen an increase in projects since the pandemic. And things really slowed down a lot, obviously, during the pandemic with the government institutions and people working from home. But we really didn't see much of a slowdown. Now, we were involved in a lot of government projects during that pandemic, but particularly after the pandemic is when we've seen a lot of people starting to move to Costa Rica. And we're seeing Americans, Canadians, we're seeing people from Europe, some Chinese. It's a whole conglomeration of different people that are moving here. And it's really taken a different turn from the boom of 2008, because 2008 was more like, I always considered it the wild, wild west. You had people coming out. The rules weren't really clear on how you could provide water to property. So, a lot of guys were coming up, buying 100 hectares, getting a second on their homes in the United States, wherever they were, and buying the property, build an entrance, bring in electricity, drill a well, and then say, okay, I'm going to start selling lots. And it didn't work out too well. So because of the regulations and things like that. Around 2011, the water laws were revamped and we're more concrete and we're more sure of the ways to distribute water to either individuals or projects. So we're coming along. In a very small country, we're coming along. So yeah.
And I mean, how is Q1 looking for you, January, February, March this year? I mean, is it still pretty busy for you? Have you seen a bit of a slowdown?
We're full. We're completely, we have three machines. We have 3 machines with 2 running constantly. Our third machine is more set up for the Central Valley. That's more for government work and deeper wells and larger diameter. But we keep a machine completely or at all times in Guanacaste, and another one down south near Dominical.
Okay. Well, I mean, drilling for some people, I mean, they know what it is. For other people that don't, I mean, maybe you can explain a little bit about what, Pura Vida drilling does, and just give us an example of some of the work that you guys have done.
Right. We're a full service drilling company. And so we obviously specialize in drilling, but we also do all types of pump installations. We have 2 people on our staff that only do concessions and water well permits. We do geophysical surveys using 2-dimensional resistivity imaging for mapping groundwater flows on large projects before you drill. So, and in addition to that, anything that has to do with groundwater and the production of groundwater, we have people on our staff that specialize at that.
Well, I mean, that's great that you guys do that, just because I know it can be a very cumbersome process here in Costa Rica. I mean, once you know what it is that you're doing, it's not. But if you don't know what you're doing, I mean, it's like probably anywhere. I mean, you can get lost very easy. And, I mean, I always say to people in Costa Rica, ask 3 people. If 2 people give you the right answer, it's probably the right one. But you can ask sometimes people on water and they give you a variety of different, responses on that. So it's good to know that again, you guys know what it is that you're doing, and especially having those government contracts as well. I mean, I'm sure that you guys have, been down the rabbit hole.
Government contracts are nice because you don't have all the bureaucracy chasing you around, since it's for the government.
True.
Whereas when you go private, well, then the government's on the other side. So
yeah. Well, at least you know how it works. At least you know how it works on the other side.
I'm a professional on both sides of it, and I'm just amazed at the calls we get each week, and people that are good people, right? And they do their due diligence, and the thing is that people need to remember is the groundwater laws. You have to deal with somebody that's dealing with the system every day. And attorneys are great, but sometimes they're not behind the lines, so to say. And a lot of things change up a lot, so the Department of Water will be doing things this way at one time, then all of a sudden they change a little bit and they go in this way. And little delays like that with a big bureaucratic institution like the Department of Water causes delays. So it's very, very important that when somebody is interested in providing water for a property, that if they don't call us, call another company that deals with that every day. And sometimes lawyers are good at legal things, and sometimes engineers and service companies are good at doing what pertains to groundwater.
So, I mean, if somebody, because there are bits of land out there which have been segregated that don't have, a legal water source, like they may have, I don't know, there may be a river on the property, there may be a spring. I mean, what are their options available in order to create a legal water source? Because without that legal water source, you are not getting building permits.
Right. Well, when people contact us, the first thing we do is we ask for a copy of the plan for the property, in which everybody will have, and that's your legal document showing how your property is laid out in the square meters and the legal numbers of the well. We take that, we input it into the national system, which has all the surrounding concessions and groundwater or water wells drilled in that area. And we tell the client, yeah, you can drill a well. So they agree that, okay, I'm interested in doing it. And we schedule a site visit with our geologist, and we arrive to the site with a plano, take a look at the setbacks to quebradas, setbacks to the private roads, setbacks to the property lines of the property, and pick a location to drill somewhere where the rig's going to fit, and start the permitting process for drilling the well.
Okay. And I mean, are you guys just drilling, or do you guys do artisanal wells? Do you get concessions on, springs and rivers? I mean, what is it that you guys mainly focus on?
We mainly focus on drilled water wells with the machine, and the concessions that pertain to them types of wells. So our geologist that we work with, which has been with us for a very long time, and she's professor at the University of Costa Rica. she does things like artesian wells, concessions on artesian wells. But I have mixed feelings about artesian wells.
Why? Tell us. I'm interested to know your thoughts on artesian wells.
Well, I think that the government really, they kind of threw us a bone, right? They said, okay, we're going to loosen up the regulations on artesian wells. Whereas you don't have to pull a permit, and supposedly you don't have to pull a concession. But if you want to use the well for a house that has a substantial use of water, you still have to inscribe that well. So it's not a concession, but you still have to have a technician from the Department of Water come out, inspect the well, and you need to provide some type of proof that the well produces X amount of water and also a clean water sample. Now, my experience is that most artesian wells, and not all of them, but let's just say 80% of artesian wells fail in the months of February and March when it's dry. Yeah. So, I don't want to discourage people from doing artesian wells, because they do work, but you need to do them in the correct locations. And where I see the most success with artesian wells is near the beach, because you have the ocean, which is salt water with dissolved solids, and it's heavier than fresh water. And it's like a natural barrier to have a big pocket of water, of fresh water, right near the ocean. And normally you can dig down and set some of them, what they call canterillas or cement tubes, and get a water source. The second problem with artesian wells is that they're just, in my opinion, they're dangerous, because any type of surface contamination that is around that well is going to be coming into the hand dug well. And it's hand dug wells for me in a geology term. It's a capillary fringe of where you're capturing the water. So anything that's caught into the soil would seep into this hand dug well and provide you with water. And sometimes it's deceiving, because you have this big 36-inch hole, and you look down there and you're like, well, geez, I have 8 meters of water down in that hole. But the problem is you put a pump in there, the water level drops, and then it takes a long time for it to recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my Jerry Werth 101 artesian well speech. But
not at all. I mean, I think it's great for people to understand that, because again, and no offense to realtors, but realtors are like, you can just put an artisanal well on this, because it's that easy. And as you said, the laws have loosened up. I mean, we had Jorge on here a while back, the hydrologist, really talk about the new process for that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I'm hearing like horror stories coming out of areas like Santa Teresa, Malpais, of like, artisanal wells all over the place, but they dry up, come February, March, April, and they're paying thousands of dollars to truck water in because, their places are full. So yeah, I mean, while an artisanal well may work some of the year, and I think if you're buying a property that has an artisanal well on, you really want to understand, like, and you probably should have some due diligence of being like, what does that look like in February, March, and April?
Right. That's what I tell everybody that has one, because I get a lot of calls from people that are looking at buying property, and I tell them, call us in February, call us in March, but get on our books now, because we're super booked. Have us go out there, put our pump down in there, and we're going to pump that well for 24 hours straight. Yep. Not just put a pump in there and let it, pump it for 24 hours, and we can get a good idea that it's going to produce water. And like I said, some of them work, the majority don't. And it's just depends on where they're at. So guys get down there and they, they're chipping away at the rock, and all of a sudden they hit a spring, and water comes shooting in there. Hey, it's great, But another disadvantage and a con to hand dug wells, they're not cheap. By the time you hand dig the well, you're still looking at a substantial investment. Normally between $3,000 to $5,000 by the time you put a pump in it. And then if you do have to inscribe it, if you've got a large structure that you're going to build on the property with a pool, you will have to inscribe it in order to get a building permit. That's going to probably cost you another $1,000 to have a technician do that work for you. And, it's for the risk of something that may not work for you. So then you call us and you say, hey, Jerry, I got a hand dug well and it went dry and it's inscribed. Well, then it's a whole nother process that we have to do before we can even start the permit. So now we have to send a crew out there, legally abandon the hand dug well, register that with the Department of Water, which they have to take out of their system, okay, the hand dug well's not there anymore. And then we can start the water well permit for the permanent well, which is going to set you back, 6 to 9 months and sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, how much, I mean, I don't know whether you're able to kind of give us an idea, but I mean, how much is a drill well going to cost?
Drilled wells, it all depends. And I'll talk to you in terms of a domestic water well. So that would be a well that's going to be fully cased in either 5-inch or 6-inch PVC. Standard water well casing, with the water well type slots in it that come from a factory. They run anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. And it all depends on the depth of the well. You get up in the mountains and you're drilling 160 meters, 200 meters, you're going to be between that $25,000 to $30,000 range. You come down low and we're drilling like a 50 to 60 meter well, you're 10 grand or less.
Yeah.
So that's how that all works out.
Well, I mean, I think it's good for people to know because I mean, it is because you guys also do wells basically for kind of like, subdividing land as well in condominiums. Do you guys also do that type of drilling?
Right. We do that a lot in the Central Valley, whereas the horizontal condominium laws are more pertinent here than in the coastline. So that's that is our other, we call that the commercial side of it. Yep. So most of them wells are drilled in a larger diameter, usually the wells cased off in either between 8-inch and 12-inch casing. Casing size for the owner gives them the ability to put the size pump they need inside the well. So for instance, if you have an 8-inch well, you can put up to a 60 horse, and 10 horse, you can go up to 150 horse. And, as you increase the casing size, the larger the submersible pump you can set inside the well.
Okay. I mean, what are the areas of Costa Rica that you guys are mainly working in? I mean, you mentioned Guanacaste there, you mentioned Dominical, but I mean, are there certain specific areas that you're just spending a lot of time working in at the moment?
We are most of our work is in Guanacaste in the southern zone of Jaco, south of Jaco.
Okay.
So not so much in Jaco, but Playa Hermosa going south. And we drill all the way down to Puerto Jimenez, for instance.
Wow.
We drill around the whole country with the exception of Limon. And it's far. And there's some drillers that are local there, and the wells are very shallow, and they're it's pretty simple drilling, so it hasn't really developed in much of a market for us. But I mean, we do the pineapple plantations of San Carlos, the housing projects of San Jose, all the way to projects and residential wells in Guanacaste in the southern zone of Jaco.
Wow. I mean, it's great that you're all over the country just because it gives you that perspective, and I mean, I think that's what important is to have that perspective. And that kind of comes to my next question, but like, which areas of Costa Rica, have seen the biggest growth since the pandemic, from your work? I mean, which are the specific areas? I mean, did you a lot more work in Osada or Santa Teresa or in Flamingo? I mean, which specific beach towns for you have just seen so much growth since the pandemic?
Yeah, everybody's moving to the mountains, Richard. So
hey, I love the mountains.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. Back pre-crisis, between 2005 and 2008, everybody was concentrating near the beach, and that has its pros and cons. It depends on what you like. But everybody is now moving to the mountains behind the beach, where they're still 5 to 10 minutes away, cooler weather, better views, and you're not dealing with the humidity and all the things that come with the beach. But I mean, seeing it in obviously Nosara, Ostionel, San Juanillo, those are the big spots in Guanacaste. You go down to Santa Teresa, Malpais. They're working on an aqueducto that's coming from Cobano that's going to Santa Teresa, and it seems like it's very interesting and working out very well. But we're also getting calls from people that are buying property in the mountains in Santa Teresa and also Malpais. So, and the same goes for Playa Hermosa right now. South of Jaco is booming. There's a lot of things going on there. And the same thing with Ubita and Dominical.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just amazing that how it's kind of forming in pockets. But I agree. I mean, a lot of people are looking for that like 1,000+ elevation. Because as soon as you start to get up there, temperatures drop a little bit, the winds start to blow. I mean, if you get high enough, you don't need AC, because I've had clients who are just like, I don't want AC.
I moved to Costa Rica thinking I was gonna be a beach guy until I went down to the beach. Man, unless
Yep.
you're surfing, man, the beach is it's a harsh environment to live versus going up about if you go up 300-400 meters, not even that, really 200 meters above sea level. It's a microclimate. It's cool. You have there's not the humidity. Your appliances last longer. A whole bunch of just benefits. And like I said, a lot of people just love that opportunity to wake up with a sunrise and go to bed with a sunset. And the views in Costa Rica, especially the areas south of Jaco, have some of the most wonderful views you ever see in your life. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was up in Tinamaste, Platanillo, the Diamond Valley, all up there last week. And, we saw the sunrise and the sunset. And I mean, just those valleys, the kind of clouds rolling off the top of the mountains there, the ocean. I mean, Costa Rica is just full of tons of microclimates and just beautiful views everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, Tinamaste, we just came back last week from Platanillo near the big waterfall that's there.
Yep.
We're doing a project for a local asada there, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. Rolling green hills with the ocean in the background.
Yep. So, and green most of the year round as well.
Yeah. And I was surprised I really thought in the last 10-15 years that the prices would increase dramatically.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of value out there right now. There was 1 hectare lots with ocean views and also sunset, sunrise views that were under 100,000, and that, gosh, I don't know if you've checked out the prices in the States lately, but I mean, that's value.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, I think as long as you're able to hunt for it, or you know someone that kind of knows someone, I typically find, again, anything that's listed usually has a premium on it. But if you can drive around sometimes, or someone, we do a lot of stuff ourselves. We find stuff with locals, that's not listed and doesn't have that premium on it, so that anyone investing here is able to get that. They're the ones gaining, on that price difference.
Right. No, that's we picked up a couple properties ourselves over the last few years, and we have one that's 20-30 hex, and not important the size, but the best values are exactly what you say. You find a guy that goes around and talks to Ricardo or whoever, and the family wants to sell the farm, and you're going to save so much money.
Yeah, 100%. And there's no middleman sometimes as well, which can be
right.
So, but anyway, not trying to get realtors out of business here, of course, because again, they do play an important part in real estate here in Costa Rica. But I mean, Jerry, which areas of Costa Rica do you think are going to grow in the next 5 years? I mean, which ones do you think are just going to really, take off?
I think Nosara is gonna grow, but not Nosara itself. I think it's going to grow to the north and to the south.
Yep.
And probably reach up. I'm getting calls from people that have bought property now in Barco Quebrada, which is probably, 20 minutes from Nosara. There's some projects that we're working on in San Juanillo, which is across the river past Ostiano.
Yep.
Nosara is saturated. I don't know what more they can do there. So I see them places really growing, and again, up in the mountains. Again, Playa Hermosa, south of Jaco, that's growing. I went to Vida for the first time about 3 months ago, and within the last 2 years, that's going to be a mini Jaco soon, and it has grown by leaps and bounds. Their rumor has it they're going to build either a Maxi Pali or a Walmart there soon.
Yeah, so, they are. They're building a Maxi Pali at the moment.
Yeah, at the very least. So those are the kind of things where it's obvious that it's growing, and I'm just very grateful and amazed to see the amount of growth that's happened since the pandemic.
Yeah, and it doesn't appear to be slowing down that much either. I mean, I think there's still a lot of cash out there that's looking to park, and people are kind of looking to divest from their home countries into, a country that is somewhat stable, uses US dollars, and that they get to enjoy as well.
Right.
So, I mean, my last question for you, Joe, that I love to ask everyone. I mean, if you inherited $500,000 and had to invest it into real estate or business in Costa Rica, what would you invest it in and why?
Geez, that's like the $1 million question, right? No, I started my drilling company for less than $500,000. No,
Yep.
that's bad. No, what I really see is like the growing trend is people buying. You know, here's the thing: when you buy a property and you start splitting off planos, right?
Yep.
And the water becomes an issue because the government doesn't want to see one person supplying water to 20 or 30 different planos. They consider that a water distribution type system. They want to have some type of control over it. But what I'm seeing with people that have $500,000 is they're buying maybe 4 or 5 hectare property, okay, and building small. What's the word they use? Not the tiny homes, but they're building small studio type structures on them for the digital nomad community, which is growing by leaps and bounds here. And they're able to lease them or rent them out or lease them out long term. And also, if they're in a desirable area, they can Airbnb them. That seems like a growing trend. And also for investing your money for later on, hopefully flipping your property or keeping it for the rest of your life, and also providing a monthly income.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, Jerry, if you're looking at one of those hectare farms though, that doesn't have water, I mean, what are your options in order to be able to subdivide? Because unless you have a legal water source, you can't subdivide, right?
No, and that's why it's fairly easy for us to drill a well on them properties, because you're not well, when I'm talking about a property like where you put multiple units on one plano, that would not be subdivided. It would be a tourism.
Yep.
As far as subdividing projects, that's where things get, and where owners really need to be aware of the laws. And we have a really great president here right now, Rodrigo Chavez, and he's really pro investment. And I hope that he gets a hold of this podcast, because if there was just a few little tweaks we could do in the regulations, it could really open up this whole issue with water to a different level. And I don't want to say that water is a problem. Water is not a problem. We can get you set up with water. Well, but the thing to keep in mind though is, like, if you're going to buy a property and you're going to drill a well on it, you legally can provide water to the plano that the well's drilled on, and to another plano. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a neighboring plano. So 2 planos, and it's not important the size, can share one water well. And a lot of that also depends, on the amount of water that the well produces. Now, what we would like to see, and really what should happen, because it's the world standard, is that should be bumped up a little bit, maybe 5 planos put on one well. And still, them 5 people can form a little association, or like a junta directiva or a board of directors, to manage that water system. Once you go past that, then you look at 2 different options on how you're going to get water. If you're a project, you can drill a well and donate it to the local ASADA, if there is one. And then the ASADA or AIA would manage that water system. But what they're going to ask you to do, they're going to ask you to build out the infrastructure, build a tank, and then give you the water letters providing water to your lots. And in some instances, it's a great deal, because you can build very dense. But I don't see a lot of investors wanting to build dense. They want to build like these little eco-climate areas that are jungle with beautiful lots and what have you. And like the third way of providing water, and what we do a lot here in the Central Valley, is you build your project out under horizontal condominium laws. Now, people are like, okay, well, that sounds great, but if you look, we both live here in the Central Valley. When you're driving around, you see a gated community, that's a horizontal condominium. It doesn't actually mean you're going to build condominiums, but that's how they name it. So you have a property, and say you have 50 lots on it. So that horizontal condominium will need to build out in accordance with the horizontal condominium laws. But that's going to include curb and gutter, fire hydrants, some overhead lighting, maybe some access points for handicap. It's going to be your standard US subdivision, right? And that, a lot of people take advantage of that, but there's an increase in your development fees. So for people that are trying to stick to the agricultural lots that are around 5,000 square meters, maybe 10,000 square meters, they look at the price tag of doing that and like, wow, I got to do all that, and I'm only going to sell 10 lots on these 20 hex. It really doesn't, make much sense. And again, we're hoping that this new administration slowly will revamp some of these laws and make it so you can pull, 5 concessions on a water well, and that would take care of that type of situation. But I've got a lot of clients that are sitting on some issues, that and we're having to, wait for asadas to pick them up, or look at other avenues of water.
Yeah, I mean, because there's a risk there. I mean, you buy a piece of land, and even when you go into the asada and they say, there's water capacity. I mean, that was at that particular moment. By the time that you go, and you have to, maybe you need to have a study done. You have to pay an engineer to have a study done before that's done, and that's there $5,000-$7,000. And once you get that study back, then, you need to put in all the infrastructure, and you're paying for that. So, I mean, there's just always risk of developing here in Costa Rica, always. And I think people just need to understand that.
Yeah, and the risks are because of the bureaucracy, right? And it's like, but people that have been here for a while, we know how the bureaucracy works. So, my number one advice to somebody buying a property, and if you want to connect to the local asada, especially if it's multiple lots, is that you go in there, and that's where the language barrier, happens, because a lot of the people that are moving down aren't fluent in Spanish. But get a company like us, or get an engineering company, and go and talk to the asada, talk to the president of the asada, and tell them exactly what you want to do, and work on an agreement with them, a written agreement that I'm buying this property. I plan on having 10 lots on it. Can I get a commitment from the asada that they'll give me 10 water letters, availability of water, disponibility de aguas from your asada. Once you have that, and that's in concrete, now that's not going to say if you're going to wait 3 or 4 years, that's still going to be valid. But at least you have an idea, right, that you're going to have the water there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Jerry, this has been a great podcast. I think as anyone listening to this can see, Jerry is certainly an expert in what it is that he does. And I think that anyone that's looking to do, a development or build a home and is looking to drill a well, I mean, I can certainly, give you thumbs up on and say that what it is that you're doing. I mean, you've been here long enough. So, I mean, if you weren't good, we'd have heard about it by now. So, I mean, I think anyone that's been in business here in Costa Rica for 21 years, I mean, it's deserves the right to have, the thumbs up. So, Jerry, really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'll put all your contact details in the description, and I'd love to get you on in the future.
Thank you. You call me anytime you want, and I'd love to do it again. And just thanks for having me on your podcast, Richard.
Not at all, Jerry. Have a good day.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that podcast with Jerry there at Vida Drilling. As you can see, I mean, it's a pretty complicated process here as wells. And, I mean, I think that Jerry and his team are more focused on the perforated wells, where they're drilling down 50, 200, 300 meters here. And especially for, larger homes and development. So, I mean, I think anyone that wants to reach out to him can. All of his contact details are there in the description, and it's Pura Vida Drilling. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please give us a 5 stars or a review. I'd always love to hear from you. If anyone wants to talk to us about any project that they want to do in Costa Rica, you can do. It's info@investingcostarica.com. info@investingcostarica.com. Until the next podcast, guys, take care of yourselves and behave yourselves. Speak to you soon. Bye.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.